This isn't some clickbait title or plot twist from a movie. I wish it were. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. But here goes. It all started a few months ago. I've been dating Jess for 3 years. She's always been a bit private, which I respected because I'm the same way. But lately, she started acting strange. She would be gone for entire weekends without much of an explanation, saying she was visiting family or seeing old friends. But then she'd come back exhausted, almost as if she'd been through a battle. I chalked it up to stress at work. She's a nurse, so I figured maybe she was just burning out. But then came the phone calls. She'd step out of the room, her voice low, sometimes even whispering. I asked her about it, and she shrugged it off, saying it was just work stuff. But there was this one call. I overheard her say, "I promise I'll be there soon. I miss you too." When I asked who it was, she laughed nervously and said it was her mom. The thing is, I've met her mom. They aren't exactly close, so that felt off. Last weekend, she told me she was going to a girls' retreat with some old college friends. She showed me a group chat as proof, and it looked legit, so I didn't question it. But something in my gut kept nagging at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. So, I did something I'm not proud of. I tracked her phone. Before you judge me, just know that this was totally out of character for me. But I was desperate for answers. I figured she was going to some party or meeting up with an ex worst-case scenario. I thought she might be cheating, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found. Her phone led me to a small suburban neighborhood about an hour away from our apartment. When I got there, I saw her car parked outside a modest 2-story house. I felt sick. My heart was racing. I didn't know what I was going to find inside, but I had to know the truth. I parked a few houses down and waited. After about 30 minutes, the front door opened and Jess walked out, holding a toddler. I froze. I watched as she bent down, kissed the kid on the forehead, and handed him off to a man who looked just as confused as I felt. She waved goodbye, got in her car, and drove off like nothing had happened. I was in shock. I had no idea who the man was or why Jess was acting like that was her child. I followed her back home, but I couldn't confront her. I was too stunned. I just sat in my car outside our apartment for hours, trying to make sense of it all. When I finally went inside, she was already in bed, asleep like nothing was wrong. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing with a million questions. The next day, I pretended everything was fine, but inside, I was losing it. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted her. I told her I knew about the kid, about the man, and demanded an explanation. At first, she denied everything, saying I was being paranoid. But when I told her I followed her, she broke down in tears. Turns out, Jess had been living a double life. The man was her ex-husband, and the toddler, her son. She'd gotten pregnant just before we met, but she never told me because she didn't want to scare me off. She and her ex had split amicably, agreeing to co-parent, but she didn't want to be a single mom dating someone new. So, she hid it. For 3 years. Every weekend she was away, she was with her son. I didn't know what to say. I felt betrayed, angry, sad, and honestly, kind of relieved that it wasn't something worse. But the fact that she'd kept something this huge from me for so long, I don't know how to move past that. We're still together, for now. I'm trying to understand her side, but it's hard. Every time I look at her, I see the life she kept hidden from me. I'm not sure where we go from here. All I know is, nothing will ever be the same again. Since that night, everything's been different between us. I thought knowing the truth would help me feel closer to her, but it's like there's a wall between us now, built from all the lies and half-truths she told to keep this secret life hidden. Jess has been trying hard to make things right. She's apologized 100 times, trying to explain why she did what she did. She said she didn't want to lose me, that she was scared I'd leave if I knew she had a kid from a previous relationship. She keeps saying she was waiting for the right time to tell me, but 3 years? There's no way to sugarcoat that. We've talked about it endlessly. Some days, I feel like I'm making progress, like I'm starting to understand why she did it, but then I remember all those weekends she left, all the times I felt something was off, and it hits me all over again. How could she keep something so huge from me? How did I miss it for so long? And then there's her son. I've only seen him that one time, but now I can't stop thinking about him. Jess asked if I wanted to meet him officially, and honestly, I'm torn. Part of me feels like I should, but the other part of me is still grappling with the fact that he even exists. What kind of person am I if I just jump into playing stepdad after learning about him this way? Last night, Jess sat me down and showed me pictures of her son. I could tell she was trying to include me, trying to make me feel like a part of this life she's been hiding. And I'll admit, he's a cute kid. He has her eyes, that same sparkle that drew me to her in the first place. She told me about the little things, how he loves dinosaurs, how his favorite color is blue, and how he's obsessed with this one cartoon I've never even heard of. I could see how much she loves him, how much it hurt her to keep him a secret. But here's the thing, I don't know if I can just slide into this ready-made family. I never signed up for this. I wanted a future with Jess, but now it feels like there's a whole other life I didn't choose. It's not that I don't like kids, it's just that this wasn't the plan. Our plan. I've been crashing at a friend's place for the past few nights, trying to clear my head. Every time I talk to Jess, she's a mess, begging me to come home, saying we can figure this out together. But can we? I'm not sure if this is something we can just figure out. What keeps haunting me is this. If she could hide something as big as a child, what else don't I know? How can I trust her again? And even if I do forgive her, what does our future look like now? Do I become a part of this kid's life? Do we start over with everything out in the open? Or do I walk away, knowing that things will never be the same? My friends have been split on this. Some say I should run, that I'll never trust her again, and it'll eat me up inside. Others think I should try to work it out, that real love means accepting the whole package, secrets and all. But I'm just not sure what to do. The life I thought I had is gone, replaced by this new reality that I didn't ask for and don't know if I want. I keep thinking about that moment when I saw her with her son, how natural and loving she was. It's clear she's an amazing mom, and part of me admires her even more for that. But another part of me feels like I'm standing at a crossroads, and no matter which path I take, I'm going to lose something important. For now, I'm just taking it day by day, trying to figure out what I want, what I can handle, and whether I can ever truly forgive her. Because right now, it feels like every time I look at her, I'm seeing a stranger. After a week of staying at my friend's place, I finally decided to go back home, if for no other reason than to talk face-to-face with Jess and figure out where we stand. My friend told me I was making the right decision by confronting this head-on, but honestly, I wasn't sure what the right decision even was anymore. Everything felt like a giant mess. When I walked through the door, Jess was sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy like she'd been crying for days. She looked up at me with this mix of relief and fear, and for a moment, I saw the woman I fell in love with, the one who always knew how to make me laugh, who'd stay up late talking about our future, who I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. But that image was tainted now, overlaid with the Jess who had lied to me, who had kept something so huge from me for so long. We sat down together, and for a while, neither of us said anything. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. Finally, she broke it. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've hurt you, and I hate myself for it. I was selfish and scared, and I didn't know how to tell you the truth. But I love you, and I don't want to lose you. Please, tell me what I can do to make this right." I didn't have an answer for her. I didn't even know where to start. So I asked the question that had been haunting me since the moment I saw her with her son. "Why didn't you trust me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why did you think I couldn't handle the truth?" She looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "It wasn't about not trusting you," she said. "It was about not trusting myself. I was terrified that if you knew I had a child, you'd see me differently. You'd think I was damaged goods, or that I came with too much baggage. And by the time I realized how much I loved you, it felt too late to come clean. I didn't know how to tell you without losing you." I wanted to tell her that I wouldn't have left, that I would have tried to make it work if she'd just been honest from the start. But the truth is, I don't know if that's true. If she had told me 3 years ago, would I have stayed? Would I have been ready to take on the responsibility of being a stepdad to a kid I'd never met? I don't know. We talked for hours that night, going in circles around the same issues, trying to find some way to move forward. Jess told me more about her son, how he's just starting preschool, how he's obsessed with dinosaurs, and how she's been struggling to balance her life with me and her life as a mom. She apologized over and over again, and I could see how much she regretted everything. But regret doesn't change the past. It doesn't erase the lies or the betrayal. Eventually, we came to a kind of uneasy truce. I told her I needed time to think, to figure out if I could really forgive her and if I could be a part of her son's life. She nodded, saying she understood, but I could see the pain in her eyes. She asked if I wanted to meet her son officially, and I told her I wasn't ready. That hurt her, I know, but I wasn't going to force something I wasn't prepared for. Since then, things have been strange. We're still living together, but it's like we're both walking on eggshells, trying not to break what's left of our relationship. Jess has been going out of her way to be open and honest with me, sharing everything about her son and her life as a mom. But there's still this distance between us, this lingering doubt that I can't shake. I've started seeing a therapist, trying to sort through my feelings and figure out what I really want. Part of me feels like I should stay, that love means working through the hard stuff, no matter how messy it gets. But another part of me wonders if this is just too much, if I'm setting myself up for more pain down the road. Jess has been incredibly patient, giving me the space I need, but I can see it's taking a toll on her. She's scared, and honestly, so am I. Every time I think about the future, it's like this huge question mark hanging over my head. Can I forgive her? Can I be the partner she needs, the stepdad her son deserves? Or is it better to walk away now, before we hurt each other even more? I don't have the answers yet. All I know is that I'm taking it one day at a time, trying to figure out what I can live with, what I can't, and whether the love we had is enough to overcome everything that's happened. For now, that's all I can do. A couple of weeks passed, and things didn't get any clearer. Jess and I were stuck in this awkward limbo, coexisting but not really living together. Every conversation felt loaded, like we were both waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd been thinking a lot about her son, wondering what it would be like to meet him, to step into this role that I never imagined for myself. But every time I tried to picture it, I just couldn't see how it would work. I wasn't sure if it was fear, resentment, or just plain uncertainty holding me back. Then, out of nowhere, Jess told me her son's dad, her ex-husband, Mark, wanted to meet me. That threw me for a loop. I didn't expect that at all. She explained that she told him everything, how she had kept me in the dark, and how I was struggling to come to terms with it. Apparently, he thought meeting him might help me understand their situation better. At first, I didn't want to do it. The idea of sitting down with this guy, who was still so connected to Jess and her son, made me feel uncomfortable. But then I realized I couldn't keep avoiding this. If I was serious about figuring things out, I needed to confront all parts of this situation, not just the parts that were easiest to deal with. So, I agreed. We met at a neutral spot, a quiet cafe halfway between my place and Mark's. Jess came with me, but I could tell she was nervous. When we got there, Mark was already seated at a table by the window, sipping coffee and looking a lot less intimidating than I expected. He was just an average guy, a little older than me, with a tired but kind expression on his face. After some awkward introductions, we all sat down. For a moment, no one knew what to say. Then Mark broke the silence. "Look, I'm not here to make things more complicated," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I just wanted to meet the guy who's been with Jess for the past few years. I know this is a messed up situation, but I figured it might help if we talked." I appreciated his straightforwardness, and as we started talking, I found myself relaxing a bit. Mark told me about how he and Jess had split up, how they tried to make it work for their son's sake, but ultimately realized they were better off apart. He spoke about their son, Ryan, with so much love and pride that it was hard not to feel something stir inside me. "Jess is a great mom," Mark said, looking me in the eye, "and she's told me a lot about you. She wouldn't have kept you in her life if she didn't think you were someone special. I know what she did wasn't fair to you, but I also know she's been struggling to balance everything. I just wanted you to know that whatever happens, Ryan's my priority, and I'm here to make things as easy as possible for everyone." It was surreal, sitting there and talking about a child I'd never met with the man who was his father. But hearing Mark's perspective helped me see things in a new light. He wasn't my enemy. He was just a dad trying to do right by his kid. And Jess, she wasn't some villain who'd set out to deceive me. She was a mom who'd made some bad choices out of fear and desperation. As the conversation wound down, Mark gave me a small smile. "Ryan's a good kid," he said. "If you ever want to meet him, I think it'd be good for him to know who you are." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Jess reached out and squeezed my hand under the table, her touch both comforting and unsettling. After we said our goodbyes to Mark and left the cafe, I felt like I was finally starting to see the bigger picture, even if it was still a bit blurry. When we got home, Jess turned to me, her eyes full of hope and fear. "So, what do you think?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think I'm ready to meet Ryan." The relief on her face was palpable, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a shot at making this work. A few days later, Jess arranged for me to meet Ryan. It was just supposed to be a short visit, nothing too overwhelming. We decided on a park near Jess's place, somewhere familiar for Ryan so he wouldn't feel out of place. When we got there, my heart was pounding. I saw Ryan playing on the swings, a small, energetic kid with Jess's eyes and a smile that seemed to light up his whole face. Jess waved at him, and he came running over, laughing as he jumped into her arms. My chest tightened as I watched them. This was the side of Jess I hadn't really seen before, the mom side. It was strange and beautiful at the same time. "Ryan, this is my friend," Jess said, introducing me. "Can you say hi?" Ryan looked up at me, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Hi," he said brightly, and I couldn't help but smile back. "Hey, buddy," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nice to meet you." We spent the next hour playing together. Ryan was shy at first, but it didn't take long for him to warm up. He showed me his favorite dinosaur toy, a little plastic T-Rex that he insisted was the king of all dinosaurs, and we played a game where he pretended to be the T-Rex, roaring and chasing after Jess and me. As I watched him run around, laughing and playing without a care in the world, something inside me shifted. This wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was real, and it was in front of me. Ryan wasn't just some abstract idea anymore. He was a little person with a big personality, and I could see why Jess loved him so much. When it was time to go, Ryan hugged Jess and then, to my surprise, turned to me and wrapped his small arms around my legs. "Bye," he said, looking up at me with that bright smile. "Bye, Ryan," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. As we walked back to the car, Jess looked at me, her expression cautious but hopeful. "How are you feeling?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "It's a lot," I said honestly, "but I'm glad I met him." Jess nodded, squeezing my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. We didn't say much on the drive home, but the silence between us felt different this time. Less tense, more understanding. I still didn't have all the answers, and I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey, but for the first time in a while, I felt like maybe we could navigate it together. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to make this work, not just for Jess and me, but for Ryan too. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that life rarely goes according to plan. All you can do is take it one step at a time and hope that, in the end, you end up where you're supposed to be. And right now, I'm willing to take that first step. The days following my first meeting with Ryan were a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, I felt a strange sense of calm knowing that I had finally faced the situation head-on. But on the other hand, I was still grappling with what this all meant for my future. Jess and I had slipped into a new rhythm, tentative, but more open than before. We were both trying, and that made a difference. A week later, Jess asked if I wanted to join her and Ryan for a weekend outing. They had this tradition of going to a nearby zoo every few months, something Ryan apparently looked forward to with the kind of excitement only a kid could muster. Jess seemed nervous when she suggested it, like she was afraid I'd say no. But I knew this was an important step, so I agreed. Saturday morning came, and I found myself standing in front of my closet, trying to figure out what you're supposed to wear to a zoo trip with a kid you're still getting to know. It felt like a strange thing to stress about, but everything felt high stakes now. I finally settled on something: casual jeans, a t-shirt, and comfortable shoes. Nothing that screamed, "I'm trying too hard." When I arrived at Jess's place, Ryan was already bouncing around the living room, clutching a small backpack covered in dinosaur prints. He saw me and grinned, that same wide smile I was slowly getting used to. "Are you coming to the zoo with us?" he asked, his voice full of excitement. "Yep, I am," I replied, feeling a little bit of my anxiety melt away at his enthusiasm. "You ready to see some animals?" "Yeah, I want to see the lions first," he declared, practically vibrating with energy. Jess smiled at me, a soft, grateful look that made my chest tighten. "Let's go then," she said, her voice warm. The drive to the zoo was filled with Ryan's chatter. He kept talking about all the animals he wanted to see, peppering me with questions about what my favorite animals were and whether I thought a T-Rex could beat a lion in a fight. Jess chimed in here and there, but mostly she let Ryan and me talk, giving us space to connect. I appreciated that she wasn't pushing anything, just letting it happen naturally. When we got to the zoo, it was packed. Families everywhere, kids running around, the sounds of animals in the background. I hadn't been to a zoo in years, and seeing it through Ryan's eyes made it feel like a whole new experience. We started with the lions, as promised, and Ryan practically dragged me to the exhibit, pointing out each lion with a sense of wonder that was infectious. As the day went on, I found myself relaxing more and more. We saw elephants, giraffes, monkeys, and even a few reptiles that Ryan insisted on spending extra time with. At one point, we stopped at a small cafe in the zoo for lunch, and Ryan, with all the seriousness of a 4-year-old, asked if I would help him feed the ducks later. I laughed and agreed, realizing that this kid had somehow started to worm his way into my heart without me even noticing. After lunch, we walked through the aquarium section, where the lighting was dim and the tanks glowed with vibrant colors. Ryan was mesmerized by the jellyfish, pressing his face against the glass and staring in awe. Jess stood beside me, watching him with a soft smile. "He really likes you, you know," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving Ryan. I turned to her, surprised by the emotion in her voice. "I like him too," I admitted, feeling the truth of it as I said the words. Jess looked at me, her expression a mix of relief and something else, hope. Maybe? I know this isn't what you signed up for, she said softly, but I'm so grateful you're giving it a chance. I know I've made things hard, but seeing you two together like this, means everything to me. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. There was still so much we had to figure out, but in that moment, standing there with Jess and watching Ryan's fascination with the jellyfish, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a while, hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe we could find a way to build a life together, all three of us. The rest of the day went by in a blur of laughter and animal sightings. We fed the ducks, just like Ryan had wanted, and by the time we were ready to leave, he was exhausted, his energy finally running out. Jess carried him to the car, and as soon as we got him buckled in, he fell asleep, his head resting against the window. On the drive back, Jess reached over and took my hand, squeezing it gently. I squeezed back, and we drove in comfortable silence, the tension that had been between us for so long starting to melt away. When we got back to Jess's place, we carefully carried Ryan inside and tucked him into bed. I lingered by the door, unsure of what to do next. But Jess didn't let me hesitate for long. She walked over to me, her eyes searching mine. "Stay," she whispered, her voice full of vulnerability. I hesitated for just a moment, but then I nodded. "Okay," I said, my voice soft but certain. We spent the evening curled up on the couch, watching a movie that neither of us was really paying attention to. The weight of everything that had happened still hung in the air, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like we were moving forward. As I held Jess in my arms, her head resting against my chest, I realized that this was the first time in a long time that I felt like we were a team again. The road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew there would be challenges, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't facing them alone. We were in this together. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.